Welcome back. Fighting poverty and the escalating cost of living was on the agenda at this week's Energy Action Plan hosted by the Minister of Energy and Electricity. The weekly briefing is set up to provide updates on the state of the grid. The Minister said that there was a need to review the country's electricity pricing policy as it was putting a strain on all households, but mostly the poor. Let's now unpack yesterday's update with the Minister. Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa is joining us this morning. Minister, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us. So you spoke about the 10 million households that qualify for free basic electricity. Only 2 million of those households are getting that free basic electricity. Who's to blame for the 8 million other households who are not getting free basic electricity?
Thank you very much, and good morning to the viewers of Newzroom. Maybe just to make the following point that the policy for free basic electricity is established in the country, and in fact is funded through the fiscus. So there's an allocation that through a grant dispensation that filters through to municipalities and to Eskom, so that they're able to extend this benefit to households that qualify, that meets a particular criteria, a threshold of household income. So what we have found is that in many municipalities, there is no reliable system that makes it possible for them to extend that benefit to households that qualify. In some instances, the system is in place, but the management of that system is inefficient. So you have indigent registers that are not updated regularly. And as a result of that, you've got multitudes of households that do qualify for this assistance from the state that they are not getting that benefit. So to your question, it's a combination of both Eskom and municipalities that are not making it possible through a very robust and reliable system to ensure that these households are able to get this benefit. So the point I'm making is that it's an established policy. It is financed, so it's not a funding problem. It's an execution problem at the level of municipalities and to some degree Eskom. And that's why there's a need for us to find a more reliable and robust way of ensuring that these households do get the benefit that the state is extending to them. And by the way, municipalities are getting this grant, and this grant does not filter through to the right people. And it gets to be redirected to other needs in the municipalities, other pressure points. And I do sympathize with municipalities that with a deteriorating economic environment, there is significant amount of pressures that are placed on the municipal revenues, municipal fiscals, and therefore municipalities find other uses for this grant. But we're saying that it must be used for its intended purpose, especially in the midst of electricity that is almost pricing that tariffs that are almost spiraling out of control. I mean, since 2008 to now, that increase has been over 600%. That's untenable. So it's important that we find a way of protecting the poor, including the middle to high income earners, because it doesn't follow that they are not under strain. They have to make choices, but the choices that are faced by the poor are difficult. It's about whether you have 2 or 1 meal a day, as opposed to replenishing the units so that you can have the electricity. So those are the stark choices that are faced by the households. So it's important that the state comes to the rescue of these households. And the point we are making is that the dispensation is in place. So we must ensure that this money gets to the intended recipients.
Yeah, South Africa has just over 18 million households, which means that over 50% of the households in this country qualify for free basic electricity. Is that sustainable?
Well, first is that the number of 8 million does not take into account the exponential rise of informality in the country. So I think that number is far off the mark. So there's a need for that number to be revised. I'm sure it's a number, if you Google, it just tells you 18 million. I want to say to you that the number is significantly more. You don't have to believe me, just go to any township and see the levels of informality, the number of informal units. You'll see that in fact, those are not accounted for.
Yeah.
The second thing is that, of course, you can't have that situation. The fiscals will be under strain. So it's a structural problem that requires our collective attention. What makes a household to qualify for this free basic electricity, including water and other things, is because their earning capacity as a total household is lower than a particular threshold. I think it's about 2,400 or so. I might be wrong. So what that means is that people are not in employment, people are not in a position to fend for themselves. And when I say it's a structural problem, is that you don't resolve this crisis by just extending free basic services. You resolve this problem by ensuring that the South African economy grows. So it's a crisis of economic and social reproduction, the inability of the South African economy to grow. And what we know as the reasons, the primary reasons why this economy is not growing. So we know that load shedding is at the center. We know that the inefficiencies on the logistics side are responsible for that. We know that state capacity does contribute to that. So these are the structural impediments that requires resolution. For as long as we don't resolve this problem, this situation will remain and in fact will continue to become even more acute, and state finances will be under considerable strain. So this is an intervention. It's not a permanent solution. So the conceptualization and the idea of free basic electricity and water is to ensure that you broaden the flow of the social wage, you provide relief to the poor as you allow the economy to grow, and hopefully people will graduate out of those conditions and you remove them from the indigent register and they become citizens and consumers who are able to pay for their own consumption. Yep. But where we are at, it's important that we provide some degree of relief as we work to resolve load shedding, addresses the issues of the inefficiencies on the logistics side, and allow the South African economy to grow.
Okay, so we're looking at the stats now, looking at how many times you've had a tariff increase in the past 10 years, from 2013 up until 2023, 2024. We have those stats that are up there. They are the tariff hikes there. In 2017, 2018, 0.3%. You have the 2014 to 2015 at 8.1%. 2015, 2016, a double-digit increase at 14.2%. I don't know if Minister is able to speak on this. The Democratic Alliance has asked for a debate in Parliament in relation to the cost of electricity, and they say, according to leaked documents, Eskom is applying for a 36.15% tariff hike in the 2025-2026 financial year, 11.81% in the 26-27 financial year, and 9.1% in the 27-28 financial year. Is Minister able to speak to that and what that means in relation to your push also to reduce the costs of electricity?
Well, first, to appreciate the levels of increases, you don't have to rely on leaked documents, because this is going to be a transparent process. So you can see there's a correlation between the tariff increases and the performance of the grid. What do I mean by that? What NERSA does, it works within an existing electricity pricing policy, and then on the back of that, they determine parameters, which parameters they use to determine, if you like, the validity of and the rationale of the submission from Eskom for a tariff increase. So you will see that as there's a deterioration in the performance of the grid, then you rely on more expensive forms of fuel, and that is burning diesel. And we know that the unit cost of burning diesel is multiple times higher than using coal, using hydro, using nuclear, and of course, since 2014 or so, using solar. So it's important that you improve the performance of this grid. You are able to remove the leakages in the system, because that hides, if you like, the inefficiencies, or that results in the inefficiencies of delivering this electricity. And once the performance of the grid improves, then it means that you are relying on sources of fuel such as coal and hydro, and of course now we've added solar and wind that are relatively cheaper, and those are going to be reflected in the cost. And then the second thing that's happening is the liberalization of the generation side. So the kind of reforms that have been introduced and accelerated the onboarding of renewable sources of energy. We know that the price point has come down from what was about the highs of 4 rands a kilowatt hour. Now it's about 50 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's very affordable, and that is going to be reflected in the price going into the future. So these numbers, yes, you can see that there's everything to do with the performance of the grid. They've got everything to do with what was ventilated in the Zondo Commission to say that there's leakage, there's malfeasance. Someone must pay the price for that. And over that period, it was the end consumer that was paying the price for that. So we're cleaning that process. Of course, the Zondo Commission reports to the extent that it relates to Eskom has got its own life.
Apologies, Minister, to interject because we're running out of time. We know that we have to let you go very shortly. But is it true that Eskom is applying for 36.15% increase in terms of tariff for the 25-26 financial year?
I've not seen what the Eskom is proposing. At the right time, Eskom will bring that to my attention. The point I'm making is that we don't place reliance on leaked documents. I'll come to you and say, this is what Eskom is saying, and we must submit to NERSA. But the bigger point I'm making is that for as long as you have a dispensation where you are relying on the expensive forms of fuel generation, NERSA will not have an option but to approve those increases. And that's why we're going to be very aggressive in ensuring that we get cheaper forms of energy generation going into the future. And in the meantime, we're providing relief to the poor, including the middle to high income household, so that electricity doesn't erode the income of these households.
All right. Load reduction and load shedding. So we are celebrating that we have 139 days of no load shedding. But for the majority of the poor people in poor communities that are experiencing load reduction, they don't have electricity. Is it also not true, Minister, that with that load reduction, it means that there is a cohort of communities that are not using electricity, which then creates the surplus that we are speaking of?
No, that's not artificial surplus. That's real surplus.
Yeah.
So let's start there. And then the second point is that let's take for Eskom's numbers. Eskom provides electricity to 7 million households. Only 366,000 households are affected by load reduction. So you're talking about 5%. Is 5% insignificant? No. You've got this household, 366,000 households that have got up to 10 hours of a day without electricity. So it's important that we do everything to work with municipalities and Eskom to resolve that problem. So it's a problem on the distribution side, and it reconciles with the point I made earlier on. You shared with the viewers that there's 18 million households. I'm saying that you don't have 18 million households. You've got significantly more. And this is reflected in this, the challenges on the capacity of the distribution infrastructure is under strain because there's more and more people and households that are drawing from that infrastructure. As a simple illustration, you'll have a transformer that is providing electricity to 3 streets. And then you do a computation, what is the average size of the household, depending on their income status, you can make a computation of what they consume on average. And then you over-design. So if you say, these households are going to consume a 10 kilowatt hour, I'm giving you an example, then you say, no, let's make it 15 kilowatt an hour. So you really over-design. But over a period of time, there's been informality, a proliferation of informal settlements close to those 3 streets. They draw from the same transformer. You've got backyard dwellers, people who are under pressure. They really don't have opportunities to have their own house. They are renting. And also what we call must-stay in the township. They want to have additional income or an income because they are not working. So they rent the backyards out. They connect to the same transformer. So as opposed to having a transformer that provides 3 streets, so let's say 50 houses, so suddenly those number of houses have gone to 150. That transformer can carry it. What do municipalities do to protect the transformer from exploding, failing, and therefore replacing it? What they do, they choose the easy option and say, I'm not going to give you electricity during peak hours. So it's important that you reconcile.
So does that mean the fault is the municipality's fault? That they don't have enough transformers to actually supply the electricity to their consumers?
No, not enough transformers. The right capacity of transformers. You don't necessarily need many transformers. You need a transformer of the right capacity. So it's a function of planning.
Okay.
Yes, and we're going to work with municipalities. So we're not in the business of bashing municipalities. I appreciate where they come from, municipalities. As a former executive mayor myself, that we have, I'm not sure if this state has been shared. Municipalities are owed collectively 340 billion rands. And that's the money they need for them to replace those transformers. Okay. And in that category of debtors, you have business and you have government that is not paying these municipalities. And if you have to do a computation, you will see that the households, they account for less than 50% of that. A significant proportion is business and government. So government must pay, provincial government, the national government must pay their dues to municipalities. Okay. So that municipalities can receive this income and replace and modernize this distribution infrastructure so that we are able to protect the poor.